somewhere in a forgotten corner of the galaxy, on a nameless desert planet where even the wind sounded like a dying song, a human engineer named Evan stood in the middle of a crater staring at his own wrecked ship. He was stranded, alone. His vessel lay smoking and twisted like a dying beast, all hope of escape fading with each passing hour. Then he saw it on the horizon, another ship, alien, massive, its sleek silver hull scarred by fire and time, crashed into the endless dunes. Any rational person would have stayed away. Alien contact on a dead world, alone with no backup. Every survival instinct screamed danger. But Evan heard something that made him move toward it anyway. Sounds, not mechanical, living, almost human. Inside that crashed vessel, he found two figures barely clinging to life. Twin girls, identical like mirror reflections, their skin shimmering with soft silver light, their eyes like fragments of ice, their hair woven from moonlight itself. They were dying, their ship's life support failing. Minutes from death. Evan had a choice. Walk away and wait for his own rescue, or spend his last emergency power cell trying to save beings from a species he'd never met. He made his decision in seconds. And that decision would lead to something he never expected. A connection that transcended species. A night that would rewrite what he understood about loneliness. And a question from two alien beings that would haunt him forever. Will you stay here with us? Forever. This is the story of what happens when a human's greatest strength, the refusal to walk away from someone in need, collides with something ancient, beautiful, and impossibly alien. The desert stretched endlessly in every direction. Golden sand rippling under twin suns that beat down without mercy. Evan wiped sweat from his face and stared at his ruined ship one more time, hoping against hope that maybe, somehow, the damage wasn't as bad as it looked. It was worse. The crash had torn through the main engine housing. The fuel cells were ruptured. The communication array was completely dead. He had emergency supplies for maybe 3 days if he rationed carefully. His distress beacon was active, but help could take a week to arrive. If it arrived at all. Evan sat down heavily on the sand, his engineer's mind running through scenarios, calculations, possibilities. None of them were good. He was 28 years old, a civilian contractor who'd been ferrying supplies to a mining colony. This was supposed to be a routine run. Now he was going to die on a planet that didn't even have a name. That's when he noticed the second ship. At first, he thought it was a mirage heat shimmer playing tricks on exhausted eyes. But as he stared, shading his eyes against the brutal sunlight, he could make out definite shapes. A vessel, larger than his, maybe a kilometer away across the dunes. It was crashed too. Worse than his, actually. The hull was blackened and torn, one entire section crumpled like paper. But unlike his ship, this one was still making sounds. Faint, rhythmic, like breathing. Evan stood up slowly. Every survival instinct told him to stay put. Wait for rescue. Don't complicate an already desperate situation. But he was an engineer. Curiosity was hardwired into his DNA. And besides, if that ship had survivors, they might have working communications. Or supplies. Or, at minimum, company while they waited to die. Dark humor. It was all he had left. He grabbed his emergency kit and started walking. The sand whispered under his boots with each step, a sound like distant voices warning him. Don't go. Don't interfere. Turn back while you can. But Evan had never been good at listening to warnings. As he approached, the ship resolved into clearer detail. The design was completely alien, organic curves where human ships had hard angles, material that seemed to shift color in the light, symbols etched into the hull that hurt to look at too directly. And those sounds, definitely coming from inside. Muffled, weak, but unmistakably alive. The entry hatch was partially open, twisted from impact. Evan squeezed through, his flashlight cutting through the darkness within. The air inside smelled wrong. Not toxic, his suit sensors would have warned him, just alien. Ozone and heated metal and something sweet he couldn't identify. His light swept across the interior and stopped. Two figures lay on the floor near what looked like a control console. They weren't moving much, but he could see their chests rising and falling with shallow breaths. Evan approached cautiously, his light revealing details that made his breath catch. They were female, humanoid, but definitely not human. Twins, identical in every way he could see. Their skin had a luminescent quality, pale silver that seemed to glow faintly from within. Their hair was long and white, almost translucent, spread out around them like pools of liquid starlight. They wore form-fitting suits that looked more like second skin than clothing, damaged in places, showing more of that shimmering skin beneath. They were beautiful in a way that was almost painful to look at, alien and familiar at the same time. Evan knelt beside them, checking for signs of injury. One had a gash on her arm, already sealed with some kind of biological foam. The other seemed physically intact but barely conscious. His medical scanner read their vitals, elevated heart rate equivalent, blood oxygen levels critical, body temperature dropping. They were dying. The ship's life support had failed. They had maybe an hour, maybe less. Shit, Evan muttered. He hadn't expected this. Hadn't expected to find anyone alive, let alone beings who looked so fragile, so vulnerable. He moved quickly to the ship systems, assessing the damage with an engineer's practiced eye. The power core was depleted but intact. The life support had shut down to preserve what little energy remained. If he could jumpstart the system, redirect power from non-essential systems, he might be able to get oxygen flowing again. It would drain his own emergency power cell completely, leave him with nothing for his own ship's repairs. But these two would die without it. Evan didn't hesitate. He pulled the power cell from his pack and started connecting cables to the alien ship systems. The technology was foreign, but energy transfer was universal. Find the right connectors, match the voltage, complete the circuit. Sparks danced across the wiring as power flowed into the dying ship. Systems hummed to life. Lights flickering on, displays glowing with alien script, and most importantly, the atmospheric processor beginning its low rumble. One of the twins opened her eyes. They were incredible eyes. Pale blue-gray that seemed to hold depths. Like looking into clear ice and seeing stars frozen beneath. She looked directly at Evan, and he felt something shift in his chest. Recognition. Connection. Something. "You're not one of us?" She whispered in a language his translator struggled with but managed to parse. "No," Evan replied. "I'm human." The second twin stirred, lifting her head slightly. "Why are you helping us?" Her voice was weak but carried genuine confusion. Why was he helping them? He could have walked away. Should have walked away. He just used his only emergency power source to save two aliens he'd never met. But something in their eyes, exhausted, fragile, like light before dawn, made it impossible to do anything else. "Because you're alive," he said simply. "And life is worth fighting for." He got back to work. His hands moved with practiced efficiency, rerouting power, stabilizing the environmental systems, checking for critical damage. He was good at this. One of the best engineers in his district. Every movement gave them hope. First, he restored full oxygen flow. Then he stabilized the energy core to prevent cascade failure. The engines were dead. This ship wasn't flying anywhere. But at least the hull was alive again, vibrating gently with restored power. The twins watched him work. They didn't speak, didn't interfere, just observed with those incredible eyes that seemed to see right through him. Occasionally he heard them whisper to each other in their own language, voices soft as breath. It sounded almost like prayer, and he got the sense that these words carried not just fear but memory. Of a home, a distant planet, somewhere they might never return to. Hours dragged by. Evan worked until exhaustion made his hands tremble. At one point he fumbled a connection and the older twin, he decided to think of them that way though he had no idea if they actually had different ages, moved closer. "You're tired," she said softly. "We can help." "No." He managed a weak smile. "If you want to survive, trust me." When the ship systems finally stabilized completely, he let out a breath he didn't know he'd been holding. Felt like a miracle. Quiet, not dramatic, but real. "Done," he said, wiping sweat from his face. "Your ship is alive." Both twins stood, shaky but recovering. Light returned to their eyes. And in that moment, Evan realized he'd never seen anything more beautiful. They approached him, moving with an alien grace that was mesmerizing. The older twin looked at him with wonder. "You saved us, just like that, without reason." "Does saving someone need a reason?" he asked. Silence fell. Only the soft hum of restored systems filled the space. Then the younger twin stepped forward. "You're human, and we're other. Aren't you afraid?" Evan smiled. "I'd be afraid if I didn't see the same pain in your eyes that I've seen in human eyes. We're not so different." At that moment, somewhere far above, his distress beacon flared. Help was coming. Eventually, Evan knew he should return to his ship. Wait for rescue. Go home to his empty apartment, his routine life, his comfortable loneliness. But he didn't move. The twins stood before him, alive because he'd chosen to help. They exchanged glances, some silent communication passing between them. Then the older twin spoke quietly. "Please, stay until morning. There's something we want to show you." The words weren't a request. They were an invitation into something larger, into trust, into connection being born at the edge of miracles and impossibility. Evan looked at them and nodded. "Okay, just until morning." They smiled for the first time. Their smiles were soft, genuine, like light breaking through darkness. And Evan understood, in that moment, that he just crossed a threshold he couldn't uncross. Night on the nameless planet was different. The twin suns set in sequence, painting the desert in shades of amber and violet before darkness fell complete. But it wasn't empty darkness. The stars hung so low they seemed touchable, their light casting the sand dunes in ethereal silver. Evan sat outside the repaired ship with the twins, watching the sky transform. They'd introduced themselves properly now. The older was called Lyria, the younger Mira, but they explained that names were almost meaningless to their kind. "We're not truly separate," Lyria said, her voice carrying that melodic quality that made even simple words sound like music. "We're one consciousness split between two bodies. When one thinks, the other knows. When one feels, the other experiences it." Evan tried to wrap his mind around that. "So you're, what? A hive mind?" "Not exactly." Mira smiled, and he noticed how her expression exactly mirrored her sister's. "We're two parts of a whole. Like your left hand and right hand belong to one person." "Then why two bodies?" They were quiet for a moment. Then Lyria spoke, her voice softer, sadder. "We weren't always like this. Our people, we come from a civilization that mastered cloning millennia ago. When our homeworld began to die, the elders decided to preserve our culture by creating living archives. Pairs of clones that carried all our memories, our history, everything we were." "You're walking libraries," Evan said, understanding dawning. "Yes. Myra's luminescent eyes reflected starlight. But something went wrong. The cloning process was supposed to suppress emotion, keep us objective, pure data storage. But we developed feelings anyway. We became too human. That word, human, sounded strange in her mouth, almost reverent. And that's a problem? Evan asked. Lyria nodded. Our creators didn't know what to do with us. Archives that feel fear, that question orders, that want things. We were supposed to be tools. Instead, we became individuals. So they got rid of you. Sent us to find answers. Mira corrected. Told us to search for the human worlds. They'd heard stories about your species, that you'd somehow learn to love without fear. We wanted to understand what that meant. Evan laughed, but without bitterness. Love isn't a formula. It's not code or energy. It's a wound we call a miracle. The twins looked at him with those penetrating eyes. You speak like you felt it, Lyria said quietly. And lost it. Yes. The word hung in the air between them. Evan hadn't talked about Sarah in 3 years. Hadn't let himself think about the accident. About coming home to an empty house that would stay empty forever. But somehow, sitting here under alien stars with two beings who weren't even entirely human, it felt easier to remember. Her name was Sarah, he found himself saying. We were supposed to get married. Had everything planned, the ceremony, the honeymoon, the house we'd buy together. Then a transport accident. Wrong place, wrong time. She was just gone. The twins were silent. Not with pity, with understanding. Deep, genuine understanding that seemed to come from somewhere beyond words. We thought love was connection, Lyria said softly. But you showed us its choice. You helped us even though you didn't have to. You saved us without expecting anything in return. That means you already live what we've been searching for. Evan looked away. If you knew how many mistakes I made before understanding that. But Mira reached out and touched his hand. The moment her fingers made contact, the world shifted. Images flooded Evan's mind. Not his memories, but theirs. A planet covered in mirror-like towers reaching toward a violet sky. People like them, silent and beautiful, all staring upward at stars they could never reach. And a voice, calling from far away. We are memory, but we dream of becoming feeling. He jerked back, gasping. What was that? We connected, Mira said gently. Your consciousness opened to us. You let us see who humans really are. Lyria moved closer, her eyes glowing softly. Evan, you need to know what you did changed us. We're not just copies anymore. We feel now. We want to live. Really live. He stepped back, overwhelmed. And what does that mean? It means you're part of our story now, Mira said simply. Above them, the stars wheeled in their ancient patterns. The desert stretched endlessly in all directions. And Evan sat with two alien beings who'd somehow become more real to him than anyone had been in years. They talked through the night, about everything and nothing. Lyria told him about their homeworld. The crystalline spires that sang in the wind, the lakes that reflected thoughts instead of images, the gardens where memory itself grew like flowers. Mira described their purpose, to travel, to learn, to carry their civilization's essence to new worlds in case the old one died completely. And Evan told them about Earth. The smell of rain on concrete, the sound of ocean waves, the taste of his grandmother's cooking, the feel of Sarah's hand in his, warm and alive and then suddenly, impossibly absent. You loved her deeply, Lyria observed, more than I knew how to express. And now I'm alone. By choice. He looked at the twins. It's easier than risking that pain again. Mira tilted her head. But loneliness is also pain. Different kind. Is it though? He didn't have an answer for that. The twins moved closer, one on each side of him. Their presence was warm, comforting in a way he hadn't felt in years. They weren't trying to replace what he'd lost. They were just there, present, real. Evan, Lyria said softly, can we show you something? Before he could answer, both twins placed their hands on his temples. The world exploded into sensation. He saw through their eyes, 4 perspectives at once, 2 bodies but 1 mind. Felt their memories flooding through him. The moment they woke up as clones, confused and afraid. The years of training, being taught to suppress everything human about themselves. The night they first rebelled, when Mira cried and Lyria held her and their creators looked on in horror. And he felt their emotions toward him. Gratitude, yes, but more than that. Wonder, fascination. Something deeper that didn't have a name in either language. When they released him, he was trembling. What are you? He whispered. We don't know anymore, Mira admitted. We were archives, tools. But you treated us like people, like we mattered. That changed something fundamental in us. Lyria's hand found his. We're discovering what it means to be alive. And we want to understand more. About humans. About feeling. About why your species chooses connection even when it causes pain. Evan looked at their faces. Identical but somehow different in small ways. The slight tilt of Lyria's head. The way Myra's eyes crinkled when she almost smiled. They were learning to be individuals while still being one. It was impossible. Beautiful. Terrifying. I don't have answers, he said. I'm just a guy who fixes ships and lost the person he loved most. But you're here, Mira said simply. You didn't walk away. That's already more than most beings would do. The night deepened around them. Above, a meteor shower began, streaks of light across the cosmic darkness. The twins gasped in synchronized wonder. Beautiful, Lyria breathed. We've seen thousands of worlds, Mira added. But we've never just watched, just existed in a moment. Evan smiled. Welcome to being human. They sat in comfortable silence, three beings from different worlds, watching stars fall across an alien sky. And for the first time since Sarah died, Evan felt the crushing weight of loneliness lift slightly. Not gone, never fully gone, but lighter. As dawn began to paint the horizon with color, Lyria turned to him. Your rescue ship will arrive soon, she said. You'll go home. Yes. And we'll continue our journey. Yes. Silence. Then Mira asked the question that changed everything. What if you didn't go back? What if you stayed here, with us? The question hung in the air like a physical thing. Evan stared at the twins, trying to process what Mira had just asked. Stay? Here? With them? That's... He struggled for words. That's impossible. I have a life, a job, people expecting me. Do you though? Lyria asked gently. You told us yourself you're alone by choice. You left Earth to work in the outer colonies specifically to avoid connections. What are you really going back to? The truth of her words hit harder than he wanted to admit. His apartment on Mars Station was empty except for basic furniture. He had co-workers but no friends. His family had given up trying to reach him years ago, tired of his emotional walls. Sarah's death had hollowed him out, and he'd never refilled the space she left behind. But I can't just abandon my species, he protested weakly. I'm human. You're whatever you are. It doesn't work that way. Why not? Mira moved closer. You've already shown us that connection transcends species. You saved us without thinking about whether we were compatible or valuable or worth the risk. You just acted. Because it was right. That's different than staying forever. Is it? Lyria's eyes held his. Or is it just the next step in the same choice? To not walk away from something meaningful because it's scary or unconventional. Evan stood up, pacing. His mind raced through scenarios, possibilities, consequences. If he stayed, he'd be abandoning humanity's networks completely. Living as what, a companion to two alien beings? An adopted third member of their dual consciousness? It was insane. But if he left, the thought of returning to his empty apartment, his isolated life, his carefully maintained loneliness, suddenly it felt suffocating. What would staying even look like? He asked. You're searching for something. I don't even understand what it is you're looking for. The twins exchanged one of their silent communications. Then Lyria spoke. We're searching for meaning. Our creators made us to preserve the past. But preservation isn't the same as living. We want to understand what life actually is, not archive data about it, but the experience itself. And you think I can teach you that? We think, Mira said carefully, that maybe we can discover it together. You're learning how to live again after loss. We're learning how to live for the first time. Perhaps that journey is meant to be shared. It was tempting, dangerously tempting. Evan thought about the moment he'd first seen them. Dying, fragile, beautiful. The way his hands had moved without conscious thought to save them. The night they'd spent under alien stars, sharing stories and memories and something deeper than words. He felt more alive in the past 12 hours than he had in 3 years. But was that enough reason to abandon everything? I need to think, he said. Of course. Lyria stood gracefully. We have time. Your rescue won't arrive for another few hours. They went back inside the ship, the twins to check their systems, Evan to sit with his thoughts. The interior of the alien vessel had transformed overnight. What had been a dying husk was now functional, even comfortable. The twins had activated more systems, soft lighting that pulsed like a heartbeat, displays showing star charts and data Evan couldn't read, and something that might have been music but sounded like mathematics made audible. It was beautiful, strange, nothing like home. But what was home anyway? Mira found him staring at a view screen showing the desert outside. Having doubts. Having all the doubts. He admitted. This is crazy. You know that, right? Humans don't just run off with alien beings they met 12 hours ago. And yet, she said with a small smile, you're considering it. He couldn't deny that. Tell me something, Evan said. What happens to you if I leave? Where do you go next? We continue searching. Perhaps we find other humans willing to teach us. Perhaps we never find what we're looking for and eventually return home as the tools our creators wanted us to be. That would be sad. Yes. Lyria appeared in the doorway. But it's not your responsibility to save us from that fate. You already saved our lives. That's more than enough. Was it though? Evan looked at the twins, these impossible beings who were somehow one and two at the same time, who'd been created as emotionless archives but developed feelings anyway, who'd asked him to stay not out of need but out of genuine desire for connection. They weren't trying to manipulate him, weren't offering promises or guarantees, just honest vulnerability. Can I ask you something? He said. When you connected with me last night, when you showed me your memories, could you see mine too? Yes, Mira admitted. We saw Sarah. We saw your pain. We saw everything you've carried alone. Then you know I'm broken. I'm not some guru of human emotion. I'm just a guy who couldn't save the person he loved and spent 3 years running from that failure. Lyria moved closer. We know, and we don't care. We're not looking for perfection, Evan. We're looking for authenticity. You showed us that when you saved us, you didn't calculate whether we deserved rescue or whether helping us served some greater purpose. You just did it because you couldn't not do it. That's what being alive means, Mira added. Acting on feeling even when logic says stop. Choosing connection even when it's risky. Staying even when leaving is easier. Evan felt something crack inside his chest. A wall he'd built carefully over 3 years, suddenly developing fissures. If I stay, he said slowly, it won't be forever. I'm still human. I need to understand what that means, what I'm choosing. We understand, Lyria said. Stay with us for a while. See if this feels right. If it doesn't, we'll help you contact your people. No judgment. No pressure. And if it does feel right? The twins smiled. Perfectly synchronized expressions of hope. Then we'll figure out what comes next. Together. Outside, the twin suns climbed higher. The desert gleamed like liquid gold. And somewhere above, Evan knew. A rescue ship was approaching with every passing minute. He could walk out right now. Flag them down. Go back to Mars Station, to his empty apartment, to his safe, isolated life. Or, he looked at Lyria and Mira. These beautiful, impossible beings who'd somehow become real to him in the span of a single night. Okay, he heard himself say. I'll stay. For a while. See what happens. The joy that lit their faces was like watching stars ignite. They didn't hug him. Their species apparently didn't do that. But they both reached out and touched his hands. One on each side. And that connection was more intimate than any embrace. Through the touch, he felt their emotions flooding into him. Relief, happiness, excitement, hope, and something deeper that his mind translated roughly as rightness. The feeling that a pattern had completed itself, that pieces had clicked into place. Thank you, they whispered in unison. Don't thank me yet, Evan said, but he was smiling. You're stuck with a grieving human who doesn't know what he's doing. Perfect, Mira said. We're stuck with being archives who don't know how to feel. We'll figure it out together. The rescue ship arrived 3 hours later, its approach visible long before it descended. Evan stood outside watching it come, the twins beside him. His heart pounded. Last chance to change his mind. Last chance to choose safety over uncertainty. The ship landed 50 meters away, sending up clouds of golden dust. The hatch opened and Captain Rodriguez emerged. A gruff woman Evan had worked with before. Carter, she called out. Damn glad to see you alive. We picked up your distress signal and... She stopped, noticing the twins. Who are they? Long story, Evan called back. But I need to tell you something. He walked toward the rescue ship, aware of the twins watching from a distance. Rodriguez met him halfway, her expression shifting from relief to confusion. I'm not coming back, Evan said. Not yet, anyway. What? These beings? He gestured toward Lyria and Mira. They saved my life after I crashed. Their ship is damaged but functional. I'm going to help them complete their journey. Rodriguez stared at him like he'd grown a second head. Carter, you can't be serious. You're abandoning a rescue? Do you know how much paperwork that causes? Despite everything, Evan laughed. Sorry about the paperwork. This is insane. You don't know them. You don't know where they're going. This is literally the stupidest thing I've heard in my entire career. Yeah, Evan agreed. It probably is. So come back to the ship. We'll report the alien contact, get proper first contact protocols involved. Do this the right way. He shook his head. The right way would take months. Committees, analyses, reports. By then, they'd be gone. And I'd be back in my apartment wondering if I just let something important slip through my fingers. Rodriguez was quiet for a long moment. Then she sighed deeply. You're really doing this. I'm really doing this. Fine. But I'm logging this officially. Civilian contractor Evan Carter has declined rescue and chosen to remain with unknown alien entities of his own free will. If you die out here, it's on your head. Understood. She pulled a data chip from her pocket. At least take this. Emergency protocols, medical supplies list, contact codes for nearby stations. Just in case you come to your senses. Evan accepted it. Thanks, Rodriguez. Don't thank me. Think I'm watching a man throw his life away. But her expression softened slightly. Though I gotta say, haven't seen you smile in 3 years. Not once. And you're smiling now. He touched his face, surprised to find she was right. Good luck, Carter. Try not to get eaten by aliens or whatever. I'll do my best. Rodriguez returned to her ship. Evan walked back to the twins, watching the rescue vessel lift off and disappear into the violet sky. You did it, Lyria said softly. You chose. I chose, he confirmed, and the weight of it hit him. He'd just abandoned his species, his career, everything familiar. For what? For 2 alien beings he'd known less than a day. It should have terrified him. Instead, it felt like the first honest choice he'd made in years. So, Mira said with a smile, where do we go now? Evan looked at them, these beautiful impossible beings, and felt something shift inside him. Not replacement for what he'd lost. Just new possibility. You said you were searching for answers about humanity, about feeling, about love. He gestured to their ship. Then let's search together. I'll show you what being human means. And maybe you'll show me how to be human again instead of just surviving. The twins exchanged one of their silent communications. Then Lyria spoke. Our ship has enough power to reach the nearest inhabited system. From there we can explore, see worlds, meet people, experience everything we were never meant to experience. And you'll come with us, Mira added. Not as a teacher or a guide, as part of us. The way we're becoming part of you. Evan felt that strange connection again. The sense that his consciousness was expanding to include theirs, that boundaries were becoming permeable in ways that shouldn't be possible. I don't fully understand what's happening between us, he admitted. Neither do we, Lyria said. But that's part of the discovery. They returned to the ship. Over the next hours, Evan helped them plot a course, repair remaining systems, and prepare for departure. The work was familiar, engineering problems had solutions, but everything else was brand new territory. As he worked, he noticed the twins studying him. Not just watching but absorbing. They mimicked his expressions, his gestures, the way he unconsciously hummed while concentrating. You're learning from me, he observed. We're designed to absorb and preserve, Mira explained. But now we're choosing what to learn. Choosing to become more like you. Is that what you want? To be human? Lyria considered the question. We want to be ourselves. But you've shown us that ourselves can include pieces of others. That identity is fluid. That becoming is better than just being. It was a profound thought. And it made Evan realize that maybe he'd also been learning from them, that his own rigid identity as the grieving widower was just one possible version of himself. That evening, as the ship's engines hummed to life and they prepared for departure, the twins asked him one final time. Are you sure? Once we leave this planet, turning back becomes much harder. Evan looked at the view screen showing the desert where he'd crashed, where he'd saved 2 lives, where he'd made a choice that defied all logic. I'm sure. The ship lifted smoothly, leaving the golden sands behind. Through the view screen, Evan watched the planet shrink, then disappear as they entered the dark between stars. He should have felt afraid, lost, adrift. Instead, he felt lighter than he had in years. Lyria and Mira sat on either side of him as they traveled through the void. Their presence was warm, comfortable, like coming home to a place he'd never been. Tell us about Sarah, Mira said softly. Not the pain of losing her, the joy of loving her. And for the first time since her death, Evan could. He told them about their first meeting at an engineering conference, how she'd corrected his calculations with a smile. About their terrible first date when the restaurant caught fire but they laughed through the whole thing. About the morning she'd said yes to his proposal. How the sunrise had painted her face gold. The memories hurt. But for the first time, the hurt was mixed with sweetness instead of just emptiness. She sounds wonderful, Lyria said. She was. Would she approve? Mira asked. Of you being here with us? Evan thought about it. Really thought about it. Sarah always said I needed to live more, take risks, stop calculating every possibility and just leap sometimes. He smiled. She'd probably think I was insane, and she'd be right. But yeah, I think she'd approve. The twins leaned against him slightly, one on each shoulder. Through their touch, he felt their contentment, their curiosity, their growing affection. Where to first? He asked. There's a station 3 days from here,